So thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are. We are excited about all the new courses and programs we have around the topic of artificial intelligence. We're trying to meet the demand, and we've got programs for people who have no tech experience and people who have quite a bit of tech experience. So we'll tell you more about that as we go along tonight. I am Jennifer Pittman, and I work at UCSC Santa Cruz. And we have here Jim Costeca, who is a program manager at the Engineering and Technology Department for UCSC Silicon Valley Extension. And then we have Hien Luu, who I'll introduce in a bit. And just to let you know, if you're not familiar with Extension, we've been around since the late 60s, providing all sorts of different kinds of education. And we're focused really on professional education, professional development in 6 key areas in technology and user experience and education, business, bioscience, and then a new area of study is pre-med post-law, which is a program that's just getting off the ground. Our specialty, our biggest asset is our instructors. They bring a incredible experience and passion and just a wonderful kind of networking to each class. Our other asset, of course, is the other students. You'll meet people in the industry already and people who are trying to grow their careers in different industries as well. We have in-person, online, and something called flex courses, which is you can really decide whether you want to show up that day and come into class. We try to accommodate different styles, different times. We have more than a dozen certificates and specializations as well. And we are accredited, just so you know. We have our University of California reviews most of our courses, and it brings just a richness of experience to our classes. So with that, I just want to introduce Hien. So Hien is head of machine learning infrastructure at DoorDash. He's got over 20 years of experience designing and developing scalable web applications and big data infrastructure and applications. He's got experience at LinkedIn, Uber, Netflix, and Yahoo, among many other organizations. He specializes in big data, technology, and machine learning, and he's been teaching with us. He's on his just finished his second decade teaching. He also serves as an advisory board member for data science and data analysis. And he's teaching a new class, Generative AI Fundamentals, starting in February. So, and with that, I will turn it over to our amazing instructor.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Let me share my screen, and I cannot believe it has been that long. Over 20 years. I started out as a student at UCSC Extension way back then. So thank you everyone for joining tonight's webinar. And yeah, we'd love to know the audience, who you are, where you're joining us from. So when you get a chance, please drop it in the chat. And then as a reminder, we will also drop in your questions, and then we'll take that toward the end. I'll take roughly about maybe 30, 35 minutes to go through the content, and then we'll use the remaining time to answer some of those questions that you might have. All right, so the agenda for tonight is to give a brief overview of what GenAI is, and then going to the origin and algorithms behind it, and then touch on a few applications. And with this technology, we got to talk about risks and limitations, a little bit about that. And then looking forward to 2024, which is like around the corner. What does that look like in terms of this area? And then we'll open up to Q&A. All right, so we covered this already, so we can just jump on to the next one. And we see some folks from Santa Clara, Singapore. I see one, San Francisco, LA, San Jose. Exciting. Gilroy, Washington, D.C. All right, Walnut Creek. Well, okay, folks from pretty much from a lot of different places. Okay, so you might already know or you don't know in terms of what does the term GenAI mean? And I want to start with that in terms of break it down. So that's 2-part, generative artificial intelligence. And I believe at this point, most of us have some notion of what artificial intelligence is. So I'm not going to go there. but essentially some computer programs that are designed to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence to do. Okay, so that's part. There's a lot of resources and materials out there. The part that's kind of new in the last year and a half is the generative part. What that means is the ability to generate content. Now AI can generate content, and that's what we call generative artificial intelligence, or GenAI. I'm going to use that short phrase from here on. And what kind of content can it generate? Well, we got all these different types of content that you listed here and more, right? From text to code to images to videos and potentially more. And this is a very exciting artificial intelligence that very, very different than we call traditional AI. And I'll touch on some of the differences as we move forward. So that at the high level is what GenAI is. And we'll now move forward with a little more details. And there's different kinds of GenAI or different applications of it. So we all know ChatGPT, right? I think right now almost everyone heard or use it on a daily basis. I use it on a daily basis for my work, for my writing and as such. And then Dolly for generating images, Copilot for help with writing code, Music LM for generating music. So it's fascinating, right? Using just natural language to generate all these contents. And the term I have at the bottom is called multimodal. That's the phrase that's being described, this technology, able to generate all kinds of contents in different formats. And there's more. This is just not just a subset here. And by the way, this is not new. We have GenAI before, but in a different incarnation. It may not be as capable or as talented or powerful, but we have seen this before, right? We use Google Translate. It's going to translate from one language to another. That's a form of generative AI. Series, you might have used on a daily basis to ask it to do something and understand what you're saying and take actions. Similar with Alexa. But those tasks or things you tell it to do are limited to what it was designed to do. It's not as general as the new generation of generative AI, okay? So it's nothing new, but also there's a bunch of new stuff. What are those new? Well, if you look at this list, it's a whole slew of tasks that you can ask GenAI to do for you. And it's not a small list. It covers a spectrum of buckets or areas. Essentially, if you group this, you can think of it as like you can communicate with it and it communicate back with you. It can help you translate from English to Korean, I don't know, or whatever language that you want. It can help you with event planning, right? You can go on a trip. You go to Europe or Asia, whatever, you can ask it to help plan a 2 weeks trip, and it will tell you. That will save you tons of time. Learning new about topics, learning about if you Khan Academy is a great example of this. They actually adopt and incorporate generative AI into their platform, and we can use this GenAI as our tutor to learn new languages, to learn math. You can use that to ask them to test us. Coding, obviously I talk about that, and creativity. This is another awesome area for thinking about how you do convincing argument, how you create ideas, how you brainstorm with creating a startup, for example. All kinds of interesting capabilities that GenAI now has. So this is another representation of that, but a little more specific. Can do arithmetic, general knowledge, summarization, physics Q&A, pattern recognitions. So that's the magical part of GenAI at this point. It's such a powerful AI that can do all these kinds of tasks, unlike the previous generation. A great example of what I just talked about in terms of what it can do is able to successfully take these tasks and actually one of these claimers can beat 90% of human on the SAT, the bar exam, and higher learning. With the recent GPT-4, it has really demonstrated really powerful capability. See the red bars. The green bars are GPT-3 in terms of the percentage. But GPT-4, if you look at it, some of the areas have become really can really do well for some of these exams here. So it's a big leap from 3.5 to GPT-4, and it's just going to keep going. A very quick example here. I'm sure everyone knows how to use ChatGPT, but the magic comes in is the prompt that you give it. And this is through natural language, right? So you type in a sentence and it can just generate, and it's going to be generate one token at a time. But what it generates is actually very just like you and I would be writing this, but it's much quicker and has a lot more details. And the way you interact with it, you can have different way of instructions. You tell it in terms of how to generate the content in certain style to make it easy for the audience. So example, you can say, hey, explain this, but to a 11-year-old student. Then it will really tailor the style to explain it in such an easier for these 11-year-old student to understand the concepts. That's the magical part. Another magical part of GenAI, particularly ChatGPT here. So I already mentioned about able to write code. This is a very huge area here because even like some of the best coders out there, they said when they use this capability, it's able to save them a lot of time, right? Because writing code is quite tedious. A lot of scaffolding code that you usually write as part of your work. But if GenAI, we can use that to generate the start code, the beginning piece, and then you can fill in the rest. That can save you a lot of time. Not only writing code, but also help writing test cases for your code as well. So that's another very powerful way to save time of writing tests. Not a whole lot of us are spending time writing tests in a very detailed way. So not just writing code, but also writing tests and help making our tests more testable as well as very solid. And obviously, image is very fun to play with. That you might have used DALL-E already from either at labs.openai or Midjourney and such. But it's quite amazing that when you type in like a teddy bear on a skateboard in Times Square, it will give you something that's as if someone actually there took the picture and planned a bear on a skateboard there. It's remarkable how it can do such a thing. I actually typed in this phrase a couple of days ago to see what it looks like, and that's what it did. So you gotta have to spot, a couple of pieces of detail that doesn't really look like a real picture, but nevertheless is quite magical in terms of what it can do. Now imagine that you are in a business of creating content, marketing content and such. This is going to be a great productivity tool for you. You might need to iterate your prompt a couple of times to get to a desired result, but it's much faster than if you're going to have to create it from scratch. Music is another fun thing to play around with. And I actually type in this phrase to combine like Korean K-pop with some Vietnamese instruments. Let's see what it sounds like. So it's quite fascinating. Can you hear it on the other side, Jim? The music? No? All right. But it's quite fun. And if you are into music, you can like use your creativities and leveraging the tool to generate the right kind of music that you want to create. Obviously, you can do a lot. You can have a lot of fun with ChatGPT with various kinds of questions, writing poems, jokes, just having a dialogue with ChatGPT to test it, to see if it is self-aware and such. All right, so that's a bit about at a high level what GenAI and what it can do and its capability. But let's go a little bit behind the curtain a little bit in terms of where's this coming from. This chart there's a lot of stuff on here, but what I want to point out is the technology behind GenAI. It actually started in 2018 with all these natural language processing techniques that a lot of research worked on. in terms of translation. That was one of the key things that we want to use AI for, and translate from one language to another. So there's a lot of work back then, and it has to evolve. And as we get closer to 23, then there's a lot more work in terms of in the areas of generative AI. Even in the last year, there's tremendous innovation in this space from the open source community, big companies, and obviously there's a lot of investments that went into startups to create all these applications and companies on top of these technologies. I suspect in 2024, it's going to be even more in terms of innovations. So it's a great time. It's a very exciting time to be in this area and learn what we can do with it. Now, many of you have already familiar with AI and machine learning and deep learning and such. It's kind of silly or funny that we are now calling traditional AI and modern AI and Gen AI. It has come such a long way. But I think in the last 5-7 years, most people are now at least understand at a high level how this technology works, machine learning and AI. But in the last few years, deep learning is the area that has really taking over in terms of its ability. And now that we have massive amount of data and very, very good in terms of hardware wise, in terms of GPUs, to able to crunch all through these vast amount of data, images and text and everything. So, and Gen AI, the core foundation of Gen AI is deep learning. So it's not like Gen AI was created out of thin air. There's these foundational technology that's been built up over many, many years. And deep learning is definitely a key part of it, as well as another enabler for this is GPUs. Without that, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So this is a short table to kind of compare and contrast between traditional AI versus generative AI. The first one to call out is the first role, which is like the learning approach. The traditional AI is considered kind of rule-based, right? We give it data as well as the true label, the ground truth of what it looks like. And that's how machine learning able to learn how to map, how to detect patterns. Unlike that, with generative AI is neural network driven and data driven. We don't need the label. We don't need those rules. It's magically it learns. That's the part that somewhat mysterious to a lot of people. And the second role is what we kind of went through at the beginning is for traditional AI is we train a model to perform a very specific task or very small number of tasks, right? Recommendation, fraud detections, and so on. Object detection, for example. But Gen AI, like we talked about earlier, it's able to do all these kind of things without explicit training for taking tests, like all those tests we talked about. It's able to do that. And that's where the power of Gen AI is able to accomplish these diverse sets of tasks. And yeah, so those are some of the things I want to call out. Where did it all started with Gen AI? Well, we know about GPUs, we know about deep learning, but the key breakthrough is actually came through in 2017. This paper that came out of Google, the title is "Attention is All You Need." And this paper was designed to help overcome some of the challenges with doing language translation, right? It was not designed to do all the things that we learned in the last few years. But the architecture, the deep learning neural network architecture that was designed for that purpose, it turns out it's very generalizable, be able to accomplish all those tasks that we just went through. So it's without this, we probably wouldn't have Gen AI. So this is a highly recommend if you haven't heard about this. Just go into ChatGPT, ask it to summarize the attention's all you need paper, give it 5 bullet points. It's tell you the key aspects from this paper. So you don't have to even read the entire paper to get a sense of what's in here. So there's some very provocative statements that you see here. It's the architecture of the neural network. They gave it a name called transformers. And this statement says it's essentially once in a generation breakthrough. It's interesting, like most innovation is like kind of accidental. And in a way, it's kind of like this as well. I mentioned it was designed for just translation purposes, right, in the areas of natural language processing. But it turns out it's going to be quite applicable for a lot of other tasks. And yeah, at the bottom, that's what I wanted to say and convey. GenAI exists because of the transformer. Without it, we wouldn't be where we are at the moment. Okay, so everybody know the term ChatGPT, but what is GPT? Chat, we all know that's chat. We all chat, right? Chat back and forth. But what is really GPT? So GPT is short for generative, and we know what generative means. And PT stands for pre-trained transformer. Transformer is just a neural network architecture, it's just a name. So essentially, there are two parts to ChatGPT, the GPT part and the chat part. The GPT part is essentially training this transformer to generate content. And the way to do that is basically these 4 steps, very simple. You download terabytes of text from the internet, you clean it, and you put it together, and you go and find a cluster of 6,000 or 7,000 GPUs out there, if you can, at this point, and you use this transformer network, and you probably end up paying about a couple $1 million and wait about 12 days, 2 weeks to train your generative pre-trained transformer model. That's what we call the base model, and also known as the generative pre-trained transformer. So to get to the ChatGPT part, you got to take that base model, and then now you go through the process of fine-tuning that base model using instructions. Label instruction. Here's a question, here's the answer. That's what it looks like. And then you go through a similar process and you train that base model with that sets of question and answers pairs. And then you do a lot of evaluation in terms of make sure it can recognize or answer in the right way. And you go through that process a couple times. And then finally you get to the ChatGPT part, where we all know how to interact with that with questions or prompts. And then it gives us back a bunch of text. So that's what we know today as ChatGPT, but there's a lot behind it. This, we can just skip this one, essentially the summary of what I just went through in terms of text. What's really interesting is the GPT, the generative pre-trained transformer has the evolution of those, right? We got GPT 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is coming. Every new version of these, the volume of data that being used to train these models. It's the vertical axis, the number of words, essentially. That's the volume of data that's being used to train. Gone up like multiple folds here that you see. And by the way, if you look at the horizontal red line at the bottom, right? It's 10 to the 9 that you see there, way at the bottom of this graph. That's how much we as humans read in a lifetime, comparing to the volumes of words that these models being trained with. It's quite remarkable, right? Imagine that you want to shove all this knowledge and information into the model, and the model able to extract patterns, extract relationships and such, that it encodes all that, what we call parameters. That's what this parameters over here is called. So those neural networks have captured all those interesting parts of all these relationship and the learning into parameters. And just like memory, right? The more memories you have, the better you are at a lot of tasks. So these GPT 2, 3, and 4, if you see that it goes from 1.5 billion parameters, think of it as memory cells, okay? And it's a big leap from 2 to 3, like 100 times almost. And 4 is almost like another 100 times. And then GPT-5, we don't know, but we'll see how it goes when that comes out. That's the scale law essentially saying that the bigger the parameter, the better capabilities these model will have, these transformer will have. All right, so that's origin and algorithms. Let's move forward to the applications part. Many of you might know who Andre Carpathy is. If you don't know him, he's a very famous researcher, AI researcher. He used to work at Tesla and then OpenAI. He's very well known in the space, but this is at the beginning of the year. He shared this tweet on X now. I guess we call it X. The hottest new programming language is English. Go along with that is the next programming language is English. From the Gradient Ventures here. And then recently there's a class offered by Deep Learning AI about prompt engineering. It's quite, why are they saying new programming language is English? Because now we use English as a natural way of interacting with these models, right? With the previous generation, we have to write a bunch of code, we have to feed in a bunch of parameters. And now it's so easy to work with these models, to be able to ask it to do all kinds of tasks for us, right? That's what AI models are designed for us to do, to carry out certain kind of tasks. But the way we interact with it now is in a natural way, using our own language. So English could be Korean tomorrow, could be, I don't know, French next year, but that's how we're interacting with this model. And obviously there is certain way of interacting with this model to achieve the desired outcome, right? Just like you have a robot or a tutor or student. When you ask that robot to do something, the better instructions, the more clear your instructions are, the better you get in terms of the outcome. And it's the same thing with these models, right? We can type in, a simple phrase, we'll get some answer, but if we tweak it, we provide framing in terms of what we want to accomplish. If you provide guiding details in terms of, I want it in this style, like 11-year-old kid, or I want it only in 3 sentences or 100 words, whatever that might be. So that will consider constraints. So in terms of length, you can specify the tone, write, a essay in some kind of style, for example. And this process could be iterative because you might not get it right in terms of the output that you want. So you iterate on it. But if you give it all these framing, guiding details, constraints, more clear in terms of what you want to do in this area, then that's where the power the power will shine from these models. So there's a whole field called prompt engineering that you might have heard of, and there's actually jobs with title called prompt engineering or prompt engineer that you might have seen on the internet. And by the way, these jobs are well-paid jobs. It's not like same salary as working at McDonald's. These are very high-paid jobs. And you need to be really, really good at having intuition of how to work with these models and using these techniques. So this is an example of incorporate all these aspects that talk about the guiding details, constraints, and the framing, right? It says, write 150 words social media posts in an upbeat, friendly tone, right? That informs college students how generative AI technology could impact future careers. And then constrain it, focus on opportunities and emerging roles rather than just in general sense, okay? And do not include any salary or needed details, skills. So these are the kind of things that you want to provide in your prompt in order to achieve the outcome, the output that you want. So you see, it's not bad at all in terms of just a couple of paragraphs here. And it does what you tell it to do. It does not include the technical details at all. It focuses on like supply chain, healthcare, and fashion industry, for example. This is a really fun one if you have never done it. Try to argue with ChatGPT and ask it to provide evidence and logical reasoning in its argument. It's quite remarkable that such an AI can do this kind of reasoning capability. So it's fun if you have time to spare. You can really have fun with ChatGPT. Okay, let's coming to the real world a little bit. how does this work across an enterprise, right? ChatGPT is a lot about us individual using it for generating content, productivity tool, writing code. But really in enterprise, in the general, these across various industries, how can this technology help those areas? And according to McKinsey, they have been doing a lot of research and such and report. They said that this is in a little while ago, but knowledge workers tend to spend about a fifth of their time, like 1 day a week, searching for and gathering information. Right? That's like about 20% of your work week for doing that task. Now imagine how productive we can be by leveraging GenAI to do those kind of tasks, searching and gathering information, right? So these are just a subset of area where GenAI can really help here. Customer operations, chatbot, customer support it's a prime area for using GenAI to provide good customer experience, as well as help automating, reduce response time and such. Another area is marketing and sales, because it's all content generation, a lot of it, right? And then improve lead development. Software engineering, it's a good one because of help writing code. There's a lot of people asking whether software engineers will be replaced by this technology. But you soon will realize that it's not, because you still have to understand what the code that it writes for you to know if it's writing good code or bad code. And if it runs into a problem, you still need to know how to debug it, right? So software engineer will still be there, but we're going to be a lot more productive, a lot more efficient. We can focus more on the design part, making sure the system is designed properly, scalable, and all that good stuff. Product R&D is this is very exciting too, because, on drug discoveries and all those design things is about how do you bootstrap ideas, how do you bootstrap design, giving you the ideas to go from here to there. Simulation. There's a lot of areas that need that kind of simulation. So GenAI can really speed up that process. Not replacing it, but speeding up that process. All right. So now we're moving on to the risk limitation, and then we're going to wrap up soon here. The number one thing is all these ChatGPT or pre-trained GPT, they train up to certain years, like 2022, for example. So therefore, there's knowledge cutoff, right? It has nothing about 2023, for example. So anything you want out of 2023, then best of luck, or you need to figure out another way to incorporate that knowledge into ChatGPT. Accuracy, harmful content. Yep, this is a big area. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of research behind this. We still have a way to go in this area in terms of making sure these models being fair, not biased, and actually producing accurate content and don't make things up. The part I'm really scared about is the unethical use of this technology, the misinformation, the deepfake. This is really, really scary. Examples of those is like Sports Illustrated published article by fake AI generated writers. And the last one, I believe this is very recent, about a fake image of Pentagon. There was like a big fire going on, and that the stock market took a dip for a brief period. So this is really scary in terms of these deepfake kind of information out there. But let's talk more on a positive note. What the trend's gonna be like in the coming year? I mentioned about bigger, more powerful models, GPT-5 and such. We're doing better and better on the multimodal models, better at generating more realistic designs, images, songs. AI agent is an interesting topic. With these smart models, how can we leverage it to be our personal assistants, to give it a big task and it able to decompose that into smaller tasks and carry those tasks out on its own, without us have to break down each of the bigger tasks into smaller ones and ask it to do it. So Asian is there's a lot of investments that go into startups that are building this kind of technology. And then in the enterprise, in enterprise, they are very, very careful, because if we don't put guardrails around this technology and using it in the enterprise, it could harm, their stock price, their brand and such. So, but I think in the coming years, there are going to be more and more adoptions in the enterprise. A fascinating picture that's depicted by Andre Karpathy that I mentioned before in one of his presentation. He lays out in terms of how he think about the LLM, which is large language model, as an operating system. And with an operating system, then you can build a bunch of applications on top of, right? That's kind of the idea, the power of this, the foundational layer of it. So you have LLMs in the central, which is your CPU. And then you have able to generate video and audio. That's your peripherals. We can use the internet, so it can interact with browsers or other tools or other LLMs to carry out the tasks that it can. For example, like calculating. It might not be good at that, but as a calculator, an internet calculator, it can use it to calculate complex formula, for example. So this is going to be exciting, and there's going to be all kinds of applications you can build on top of. This picture is talking about the agent part that I was referring to, in terms of the ability to break down large tasks into smaller tasks and explore them in an efficient manner. One paper just came out yesterday. By the way, ChatGPT just 1 year old yesterday, believe it or not. And this paper came out, it kind of depicts the progression over just the last year, the last few years. So I'm really excited about all the innovation that's going on in the community, open source community, by the way. That's very, very exciting. With Llama 2 from Meta and all other companies are producing open source large language model, right? Up until now, we've been working with proprietary LLMs, essentially from OpenAI, from Google, from Anthropic. And they pay, they spend a lot of money making those. It makes sense. But at the same time, there is a large open source community building all these models that we can use and fine tune for our specific areas of domain, for example. And that's exciting because we can actually feed it the data that's behind the firewall that these models cannot have access to. And undoubtedly in the future, there's going to be cases where we take an LLM, we tuning it for a specific area, like healthcare, finance. I don't know why I have two finance here. Maybe it's really important. Real estate, and as you can imagine, different kinds of sectors, right, that you can think of. Education, for example. So this is going to be a big area moving forward of taking something very, very powerful and apply it to a specific sector or for the work that you do. So yeah, so that's my spill at GenAI at fundamental level. We walk through the origin, we walk through what it can do and all that stuff like that, and where it's going to be. So we have time for QA, correct? So we have a good about 15 minutes for Q&A.
We do. Thank you so much, Hien. We have so many questions. I've been collecting them as they've been, and I'm sure I've missed some, so I'll go back and look. But if you're up for some questions, I might just dump them in the chat here.
Okay. Do you have a list that you want to dump and then I can walk through from?
Yeah, I will put those in there. Some of them may be out of your purview, but well, let me put them all in there. Let me just start you off and then I'll work on it. How can AI be used for tech support or other applications in IT services?
Tech support and IT services. Yeah, it's a very interesting. It's at work, right? We have a lot of Slack channel to support our customers in terms of how to do certain things. And we have this company actually building solutions out there that can actually come through your documentation pages, your how to do things, how to do something. And when a question comes in, then it's essentially using, you remember like using LLM and fine tune it, kind of like that. It's able to use the knowledge that it learned, but also now apply all the wiki pages and how to documentation that you write for your specific task, and able to answer the questions that, hey, I ran into this problem. How do I fix it? And that's an area that saves a lot of time because humans don't have to get involved and to answer those general questions, the one that commonly asked, for example, which we used to say, hey, go to the FAQ page, right? But now the bot can actually do that, can answer the question, can answer directly, as well as the link to the FAQ page. So this is a huge automation and time reduction. There's companies building it. Undoubtedly, Slack is going to roll out something, or might already have done so, because a lot of companies using Slack for like, Ask channel, right? People go to Ask, and then it knows it can tie that to your FAQ or documentation you write for your product. So yeah, this is a very productive, a very real example of leveraging GenAI for this.
Okay, so I have a question about security. So I think it was City of San Jose put out a warning to all their employees saying, don't put anything in ChatGPT that hasn't, that you don't want online.
That's correct.
Private are your queries and your prompts.
Yes, I saw that as well. I think the main reason is whatever you type in the prompt that's sent to OpenAI AI or ChatGPT or BART or whatever, right? It's going to be like their data at that point. And they might use that data not for harmful way, but to train their model or to train the ChatGPT to improve the product. But because your data become their data and somehow encoded in the model. And there might be a chance that data might show up to the other users. So there's a very recent that I just showed actually. There was a study by some Google engineer that they used some special prompts that able to extract the train data from ChatGPT. So that's an example why behind that recommendation. So.
All right. So can ChatGPT speak in all languages? Does it speak better in some languages than others? Does all human written text, quote in quotes, include everything written in all languages? If it can, then the new programming language is any language, not only English, right?
It doesn't have to be English, right? But all those people that say those phrases are in the US, and that's why they say English. But yeah, if you go to ChatGPT or OpenAI page, it has a list of languages that ChatGPT can speak in. Obviously, its capabilities depending on the amount of text in that language that the model was trained with. So if for some languages that's common, not common, then obviously it has knowledge about. But for common languages like English, French, Japanese, Chinese, it wouldn't have any problem in talking in those languages. Why am I say talking?
Well,
Converse with you in that language.
it kind of dovetails to another question about bias and how do we protect ourselves against bias? Because if it's only speaking in the most popular languages, popular meaning who's programming, and then how do we protect ourselves from not hearing the unheard, I guess, would be one question.
Yeah, there's a lot of research in this area. Obviously, I mean, it's not only with ChatGPT, but all AI and all the traditional model, right? Because it's all about like, at the end of the day, these models train with data, so garbage in, garbage out, kind of thing. But in terms of, there are like at a high level, there's like some post-processing steps. There's research in that area how to. There's just two. obviously these companies might do some pre-processing in terms of the bias information. They might want to get data from multiple sources rather than just a specific source that tend to be biased to a certain community, for example. So that's up to the people that are training that. But also there's the research on the output side, how to protect that. I don't have a good answer on this one. It's a it's a challenging topic.
Yep. Okay, here's another one. Does the order in which you state the prompt description have any significance in terms of importance?
Aha. There's actually a study conducted, and it's also proven at many companies, even at DoorDash. That's what we recognize. The order matters to some extent. So only when you do this repeatedly for like applications and you're testing it multiple times, then only you will recognize it. But if you and I are just using it on a daily basis, we probably wouldn't see it. From what I gathered, in your prompt, the part at the beginning plays more importance than the part that in the middle. The model tends to like place less importance to the middle piece and at the end than the beginning in terms of relative importance. So that's a part of like prompt engineering is
I didn't know
to
that.
understand all that nuances, how the model works. Yeah.
I don't know if you'll be teaching this in your class, but Jonathan is asking, how should we get started building a scalable chatbot? It seems to me Python and using OpenAI and APs and then RAG using a vector D8 embeddings is the way to go.
Yeah, I know what that Jonathan is talking about. I think depending on what kind of chatbot that you want to build, if you want to build like a fairly just for the learning purposes, you can use a lot of out of the box tools without a lot of programming. But if you are going to build a sophisticated chatbot for your company that are interfacing with the customer of your company, that's a different story. That you need to go all these aspects that you're talking about using RAG, essentially a way to augment the information, right? I remember I talked about the knowledge cutoff, right? It does not know about information behind the company's firewalls. So in order for a chatbot to be powerful and know what DoorDash is all about, it has to know information about DoorDash. And using RAG and embedding as a way of augmenting that information during the process of interacting with chatbots. It would not be a bad idea to have a course on this, Jim. I don't know if there's a plan, but I think that would be an awesome one. A very common pattern of building chatbot application using these technologies and patterns.
What emerging technologies in AI or ML, machine learning, are you most excited about? And are you teaching them in your course? That was my question.
So I will teach, I mean, the fundamental course is a lot of its introduction and try to using it as well as how to build simple applications. I think we definitely want a different course to go deeper to build more sophisticated chatbot and all the techniques and more programming required and such. What technologies that I'm most excited about? And I think agent is the one that that I'm excited about. Imagine one day each of us will have our own assistant to do what we want to do. It understands us. It understands what we like, what we don't like, our habits. All of us have habits, right? We have certain tendencies. It understands all that and it's able to do most of what we need to do. And we can be a lot more productive in terms of focusing on other important stuff in our life.
Okay, we're getting close to just the end of the hour, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of chance to talk about the job outlook. And then this question is, which legacy jobs are mostly likely to be disrupted by this technology in the next 5 years? Who will most likely face unemployment due to this?
I would not be an expert on this. I think there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of speculations. But in terms of new jobs, right? Let's talk about that first, and then we talk about like what a potential job that might be replaced. The new job, one area is the prompt engineering, the prompt engineer job. It's really about how to interact with these LLMs to get the most relevant output for the task at hand that you want to do. And there's a certain way of interacting and how intuitions, how these models works and such. And there's going to be more and more of that moving forward from many sectors, right? Lawyers, marketing, finance, investments, bankings, and such. And in terms of jobs that potentially might be replaced, okay, if you think about what these models really good at, right? At the core of it is like generating content. So if you're in the business of generating content, then something to think about. Maybe you need to now learn how to leverage it so you can be even better at generating the content for the business that you're in, so you can be more productive. There was talk about like replacing engineers. I think in that area, I would say that we're not replacing software engineers, but more about requiring less engineers. Why? Because these engineers are now supposed to be a lot more productive, leveraging the code that the model can write for them. So therefore, a startup, for example, would not used to need to like 10 engineers for building a product. Now they might only need 5.
Okay. We want to do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay, we have several, but let's see. You talked a little bit about CV.
That's a great question. Can you talk about your course and what you'll be covering?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I think we have a course description, which is right here. And we can drop this link into the chat as well. Right? So I'll put a link here. Yeah, so this essentially lists out what we're going to be covering, the outcome, the topics and such. It's essentially trying to bring somebody up to speed of what GenAI is all about, what its capabilities are, what it can do, and how they're interacting with it, how to create simple tools to build applications on top of it. There's going to be, future, there's going to be other courses that will go much deeper. So with this course, you should be able to walk away and explain to your 10-year-old kids what generative is all about and what it can do for you. So yeah, take a look at this this webpage to understand what we're going to be covering in the class.
Great. And then I will just share, just so people have an idea of the upcoming classes. So we do have a lot of classes starting in the next couple of months. So I urge you to go to our website and check out our AI series. We also have 2 AI specialization, one that's more technical, where you're developing applications actually, and one that's more practically office focused for the non-technical minded. We can all benefit from that for sure. And we're going to have 2 new, let's see, I have it here, 2 new upcoming info sessions. Do I have the dates right here? I think it's 9th and 10th. I will double check. But they'll be on our calendar. So if you go to our website and you go to the events section, you'll see the upcoming info sessions as soon as probably early next week. We'll have those posted. And lastly, I just want to thank you, Hien, for spending your time with us tonight and for teaching our new course. It was great to hear you and to learn a little bit more. And thank you all for joining us. It's been great to have you. I'm sorry we didn't get to all your questions, but Hien will get to them in his February class.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye bye.